Hello! I'm happy to announce that I'm bringing back the group previews for every single group in the World Cup. For those of you that don't know, earlier this year, I tried to do this series as well, kind of give an early preview for every group, even before we knew all the teams which have qualified yet. But I only did it for the first half. I didn't get the chance to touch on E, F, G, or H at all. But regardless, I'm going to give it one more go. Give my final group previews before the World Cup. We're only a month away at the time of this recording. And although I already did an early preview on Group B, that is the group I'm going to be starting with today. A lot's changed since then. Back then, we didn't even know which Euro playoff team would qualify. It ended up being Wales, obviously. But also, form for each of these teams throughout this year has been pretty interesting. If you can't already tell, I'm going out of order this time for these final previews. I'm going to do my best to release every single group before the World Cup rolls around. So let me know in the comments below which group you want to see next. Whatever comment I see most of, I will do for the next video. And depending on the group, we could potentially have a guest in each of these episodes. In this episode, we got Filippo from Tactical Manager TV. He does an exceptional job covering the US national team, so make sure you go check him out. Also, I'll leave a link in the description to his channel down below. But before we get into the discussion with Filippo, let's do a quick preview on all these teams. Let's start off with the favorites to top the group for many people, England. Every international tournament, the hype is there for this national team, and understandably so. Look at the squad they have, it is incredible. It would be an embarrassment if they don't top the group. However, at this current moment of time, I am the least hopeful for this national team to properly pull through towards their expectations. They have just had a dreadful Nations League campaign. Say what you want about this tournament. I know a lot of people don't assess it to the levels of the World Cup, obviously, me myself, but these performances still shouldn't go unnoticed. Yes, they were in a very difficult group with Italy, Germany, and Hungary, but they finished last place. They lost to Hungary, the underdogs of this group, twice, one of the times being 4-0. Not only did they finish bottom in their group, they failed to get a single win. 3 draws, 3 losses for them. Now, obviously, with this World Cup group that they're in, they still should be favorites despite their recent performances. This squad is known for their incredible depth, particularly, for example, in the right back position. They have so many phenomenal options to rely on. However, at this current moment of time, you've got Reece James, Trent Alexander-Arnold, and Kyle Walker all injured. Trent Alexander-Arnold is expected to return before the World Cup. However, for Reece James and Kyle Walker, it is unknown when they will return. You've also got one of England's midfielders, Calvin Phillips, who was actually exceptional at the Euros, also picked up a hefty shoulder injury that will most likely have him be missing the World Cup. Guess who else is injured at the moment? Harry Maguire. But unfortunately for England fans, he is expected to return before the World Cup begins. But still, it's questionable times for the national team. Their manager, Gareth Southgate, has great records in these big competitions. I mean, he made it to the World Cup semifinals and the Euro finals. But also, something still seems to not be clicking on him, where he seems to be picking a lot of his favorites. With that being said, though, England is not the only national team in this group that has failed to put out a decent display recently in these friendlies or in the Nations League. Wales and the USA also have not been doing their best. It's hard to knock on Wales at the moment, to be fair, though. They were in a very difficult group where they were clear underdogs. And with that being said, they still put off some very decent fights against these big nations. And we've seen Wales have some incredible tales in these recent international tournaments. The last 2 Euros, for example, Euro 2016, phenomenal display. They also topped their group over England. Euro 2020 made it out of the group in style when many people doubted them, but obviously blew it in the round of 16s. And with that being said, the motivation will be higher than ever because they haven't qualified for the World Cup since 1958. They're definitely going to be putting off a massive display here. One of their key talking points, Gareth Bale, at the moment is being criticized a tad bit, as he hasn't been as electric as we know him to be since he has moved to the MLS. However, this man is on another level for the national team always. I mean, it goes to show what he's done in the World Cup qualifier playoffs. He was the one to secure them to the next round against Ukraine. With his incredible performance against Austria, they really can be unpredictable this tournament. I would not sleep on them to not get out of this group. Now, for the USA, they had a terrible international break where they lost to Japan 2-0, and it definitely could have been more. And they drew 0-0 to Saudi Arabia. Those are definitely not promising results for the national team, as they will be coming up against another country from Asia in their group, Iran, who have had an absolute roller coaster throughout this year, but they are definitely on the right track at the moment. When they qualified for the World Cup, they had Croatian manager Dragan Skocic, who ended up getting sacked recently. He did exceptional in the qualifiers, obviously, but he fell off with the Iranian national team. Absolute feud going on in the dressing room. The team was absolutely divided. It made me lose hope in Iran to do well in this World Cup. However, they have re-signed Carlos Queiroz, the same manager who was there in 2018. And let's not forget how great they were back then. Yes, they didn't make it out of the group stage, but they were in a group with Spain and Portugal. They were so close to squeezing out, 1 point shy of Portugal. They put off fantastic fights. In my opinion, the most exciting team in 2018 that didn't make it to the next round. That was already such a difficult group for Iran. It looked close to impossible. But now, this group is a lot more doable for them. With all these teams not looking to be at their best form, this is definitely their golden opportunity. The amazing forwards Taremi and Azmoun can produce a beautiful partnership. Azmoun is injured at the moment, but he is expected to return before the World Cup. Last time in the World Cup, Iran played very defensively. We'll see if they go with those same tactics, since now it might be a more level playing field against these other national teams. Iran went on to beat Uruguay 1-0 in a friendly recently and drew to the best African team on paper, Senegal, 1-1. So after this international break, Iran has every right to be the most confident out of these quote-unquote underdogs in this group. Now, obviously, touched on the U.S. national team the least, but obviously, this isn't any news. The main issue with this national team is the current manager. The talent that the U.S. possess could definitely flourish in the future, and I definitely think they will by the next World Cup. But right now, with this little bit of an experience, since it's a whole fresh new squad, lots of youngsters there, along with a manager that doesn't really know what he's doing, which is why it's hard to give them hope at the moment. But I saved them for last because we got Tactical Manager TV, like I said, as a guest. Let's hear his insight on this whole group. I know he'll dive into the USMNT a decent amount. Filippo, thanks for joining us once again. So last time we talked, Group B was not even fully confirmed yet. We still didn't even know what was that Euro playoff spot, who was going to be in it. We predicted it was going to be Wales, and it ended up coming true, but still, we were mostly focused on those other three teams during our discussion. A lot's changed since then, including form for all these teams, England and USA being the biggest talking points. But since obviously you are a USMNT expert, please give us your thoughts early on. What happened during this international window?
Okay, so first and foremost, thank you for having me back. But going right to it, we lost to Japan 2-0. In that game, we had 0 shots on target the entire match. We struggled to create, because I feel like Japan scouted the U.S. men's national team properly, and they knew how to set up against us. They set up somewhat of a mid-block, and they allowed our center backs to have the ball. And they're both not ball-playing defenders. So we couldn't create. We couldn't create anything through the middle. Our midfield had no creativity. We were completely outplayed by Japan. Like, it was 2-0, Isaac, but it could have probably been 3-4, and even 5 would have been a fair result. A good team, but you shouldn't get outplayed by them if you want to get out of your group in the World Cup. For that game, we were missing Christian Pulisic, Tim Weah, Yunus Musa, Chris Richards, which are essentially 4 players that are locked-in starters or starters, right, for the U.S. men's national team, and that plays a big role. Regardless of that, I still think the main problem is Greg Berhalter's tactical formation, system, the 4-3-3 he plays. I could dive in a lot more into that, but that would probably take up like 10-15 minutes of your video. Then we go on to Saudi Arabia. That game we played a much weaker opponent when compared to Japan in terms of technical ability. And from as far as I know, apparently Saudi Arabia didn't play all their best players too. So the US was missing probably 4 to 5 starters. Saudi Arabia was as well. And the game was 0-0, and it was just straight up crap from both sides, to say the least. We finally hit the target twice, I think, in that game, but it wasn't like it was a great shot or anything. And there's a lot of concerns if you're a U.S. men's national team fan.
Yeah, of course, especially the fact that these were actually great friendlies for the U.S. in preparation, because those are 2 decent countries in Asia. They were pretty solid in the World Cup qualifiers. And now the U.S. is coming up against Iran in the group stage. So what do you make of those results? Do you think that it's going to be a tougher task against Iran now?
I'm young, but I'm old enough to remember many different World Cups since 2002, 02, 06, 10, 14, 18, and following 2 national teams like the US, Brazil, and many others. I know that these results prior to the World Cup don't really mean anything once it starts. We saw France even tie the United States back in 2018 before going on to win a World Cup. Brazil in 2002, when they won the World Cup, they had one of their worst qualifiers ever, qualifying the last game, if I'm not mistaken, defeating Venezuela. I wouldn't be concerned in that sense. A lot can change. The World Cup is a short tournament. You catch form, your coaching figures it out, and it's a different World Cup from the past. The preparation period will be small, right? Roughly like 9 days or even less. In the past, teams would have 2 to 3 weeks. In terms of these specific games, I'm not overly concerned. What I'm concerned is that under the entire time, that's been almost 4 years now that we've been under Greg Berhalter, we keep having bad performances. That is my big concern. It's not these two games specifically. It's just that these two games are the norm. And to be quite honest, you might talk about it in the video. Group B itself, it almost seems like every team in that group is a mess or has something going on.
Yeah, it's true. Obviously, England is one of the biggest talking points. I think even more than the US right now because they got relegated in the Nations League. And like you said, the international breaks prior to the World Cup don't always mean everything in terms of how they're going to perform when the actual tournament begins. But there's still so many talking points based on the way all these teams performed. And like you mentioned also, it's just been a reoccurring theme for the US. And something that also worries me is the away record, right? Greg Berhalter's away record isn't great.
It's horrible. If you go back to World Cup qualifying, we only got one win away, which was against Honduras, which was, by the way, the worst team in World Cup qualifying CONCACAF. Even in the last game against Costa Rica, they played mostly subs because they were resting players for the Interconfederate playoffs because they didn't believe they could beat us. They had to beat us, I believe, 5-0, and they didn't believe they could do that, which rightfully so. They rested guys so they wouldn't be suspended. And playing mostly subs, they defeated us 2-0 away with us playing our best guys. So yeah, we are what a friend of mine calls us a pajama team. We're only comfortable at home.
Yeah, and that's what gives me the biggest concern. There are some other teams that I think are guilty for that in the World Cup as well, but the US, I think, is one of the best examples. If there are any, please share me your positives from this latest international break.
Well, let's start with one positive. I think Matt Turner's a positive, right? The U.S. has been kind of shaky at the goalkeeper position, and then when Matt Turner moved to Arsenal over the summer, we knew he was going to be the backup of Aaron Ramsdale. So my worries was that the goalkeeper that was our best goalkeeper for the past 12 to 18 months would not be sharp or be in bad form due to lack of minutes. He came into camp. He was our best player against Japan and the only probably decent performer against Saudi Arabia, right? He got a clean sheet against Saudi Arabia. You can't ask more from him. He was safe. So that's a positive to know that even though he's not playing, he's still sharp and he will be for the World Cup. But I think the one thing that could become a positive, Isaac, it's not a positive yet, is our coach learns from this camp, which he hasn't the past 3 to 4 years. So I don't think he will. But that could be a positive. Maybe it could be a wake-up call for this team's like, all right, guys, we're out of CONCACAF, which is one of the weakest confederations, if we're being completely honest, and the competition is going to get better in the World Cup. It only gets better. So wake up. We do have enough talented players to get out of our group, but if we play like this, we'll finish last.
Do you potentially see England slipping in this group? I mean, for so many people, they've been favorites for first for so long, and then the knockouts were questionable, but in this group, they still are favorites on paper. What do you think, though? Do you think they could potentially slip to second or even third or fourth?
They're the favorites on paper, and they will most certainly be the favorites on paper all the way till the World Cup. It doesn't matter. They are the team that has the most talent and depth in this group. There's no doubt about it. But they also have arguably maybe the worst coach in this group along the United States. Wales is Rob Page, if I'm not mistaken, because they had to kick out Ryan Giggs. And Iran brought back Carlos Queiroz, which, despite him not doing well with Colombia and failing to qualify with Egypt, he still knows this team and knows how to get the best out of Iran. So the problem with England is Gareth Southgate is also willing to die on a couple hills here and go down with some of the demands that he does, like Harry Maguire, right? Doesn't matter how bad he plays, doesn't matter how many mistakes he makes. He said already, Harry Maguire is going to start in the World Cup. It looks like he doesn't want to play with a creator down the middle. Maybe calling in James Maddison, which maybe because he plays for Leicester, he doesn't care. He puts too many responsibilities on Harry Kane. He has to be the playmaker and the goal scorer. I even made this joke that Harry Kane has to take the corner and go head the ball in. I know he doesn't take the corners, but you get what I mean.
He used to before Southgate came in.
He brought in Ivan Toney. I don't think he got any minutes in Nations League. So he didn't really integrate him to this team, and he could be a useful player for the World Cup. We saw in the Hungary games how to play against England. You play a mid-block or mid-block to low block. I wouldn't sit too deep against England, roughly a low block. You exploit them in transition. They're very bad when you switch from one phase of play to the other. They're very bad at defending in transition, and you exploit that left side of the field, right? Where Harry Maguire is usually the left center back on the back three, and we know how error prone he is. And sometimes you'll see Ben Chilwell or Luke Shaw You exploit that side in transition, and also they're sloppy on set piece. It's just there's so much going bad for England right now. It's a realistic possibility of England not making out of the group. It's a realistic possibility of the US and England getting knocked out. It's realistic. And to add to that real quick about England, we've seen them get knocked out in groups before and underperform. So it wouldn't be anything surprising to anyone.
This group, like, it really should be doable for them, though. That's why I feel like it might be still surprising. Also considering what they did in the Euros, making it all the way to the final, World Cup semifinalist team as well. And arguably on the last World Cup, they had a weaker squad and they still made it all the way. Granted, some people question the road they had all the way there, but this group really should be doable for them. I think the other three teams, though, are all unpredictable. Iran recently got back Carlos Queiroz, and we all know the amazing relationship he has with the national team. So right now it's, to me, a tad bit easier to bank on Iran maybe getting some good results here. But last time we talked, you were hopeful that the USA can get out of this group. You said second, I believe. What are your thoughts now? What are your current predictions at this time of early October?
It's kind of complicated, right? Because if you are covering the United States, you're American, you're a fan as well, right? You're going to have a biased opinion. And on paper, we are the second best team in this group. And I will continue to say that we're going to get second. I still think we're going to get second. The thing with it, too, is you got to see what each team's weaknesses are. And I think, for example, Iran, what we've seen in the past two friendlies, they played Uruguay and they played Senegal. They struggle with physical teams, and they struggle also with high presses, right? The U.S. likes to press, and we're a physical team. That's the way we can play, right? At least we should play that way. We're not the most technical team, if I'm being completely honest. I still have us going second, and I still have England topping the group. But again, those are just predictions based on the data we have of analysis on paper. It's not real. In the World Cup, we haven't seen the rosters. A lot can happen in the next month. I still have the United States finishing second. It could be me just being a delusional fan, but I also still think that's what American fans should demand from this team. I think we need to get out of this group, just like the English fans do too, without disrespecting Wales and Iran, because they can cause trouble, and honestly, one of them probably will.
This question goes without trying to throw any disrespect to either of them, but out of those quote-unquote weaker teams in the group, which one are you most fearful of? Iran or Wales?
I think Wales right now. The Iran game is the third game. So let's say Iran needs a win. If we have to play in transition, I think we will probably beat them. Look, if a team plays a low block against the United States, we probably won't score. It's the truth. We probably won't score if it's a low block, unless we get like a lucky penalty or set pieces. We won't break a low block. We haven't in CONCACAF. In the World Cup, it's going to be far worse. And I'm afraid Wales is the first game, and they will play a low block. They will defend. They will sit back. And I'm very fearful that they'll either score in transition with Bale, Dan James, whoever's there, Brennan Johnson. And then if we lose to Wales in the first game, just being realistic, we're out. If we draw Wales in the first game, we're in a complicated situation. So I'm more fearful of Wales right now instead of Iran because of the circumstances on the table.
Right.
Because if we played Iran the first game, I don't think Iran would sit back. And then I think they would play more of a mid-block, and it would be fine. I think we could do well. But I'm more afraid of that. But things can change. If we go to the last game and we're playing Iran and they're just defending, I'll get worried if they can play for the draw.
Once again, thank you to Filippo for joining. Make sure you go check him out. Link in the description to his channel. But yeah, my final predictions for this group. Well, I say final. It could change. At this current moment of time, I really want to be hopeful for the USA, but I'm still not 100% convinced. Look, all these underdogs can definitely tell a tale. Greg Berhalter has a terrible away record. Something tells me at the moment Iran could be the Asia team to have a solid run in this World Cup, at least make it out of the group stage. And I don't want to rule out Wales either. At the moment, I see it being one of those two underdogs making it out. Like I've hinted earlier, I'm still going to give England that first place spot. Despite their recent form, it's just too hard to see them absolutely bottling this. Maybe we could see them fall to second, but if they don't make it out of this group, my God, the internet would break. Now, for those other three teams, there's so many strengths to all of them. The USA fans still should have some belief, but I just I don't. I'm sorry. I really want to, but I'm going to be putting them at 4th still. Greg Berhalter really doesn't convince me with this terrible away record. If they had a different manager with this incredible talent, I would think maybe otherwise. But Wales look like a very organized side at the moment. They always put off great fights, even when they are looking like the underdog. So I would really bank 2nd place between Wales or Iran. It's hard to really sleep on either of these teams. It's the easiest to sleep on USA at the moment, and it pains me to say. I truly hope I'm wrong. But yeah, I'm going to be giving 2nd to Iran at the moment and 3rd Wales. I really won't be surprised if that flips around, Wales 2nd instead. So yeah, thank you guys for making it all the way to the end of this video. Please hit that like button if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're new. I'm hoping to do every single World Cup before the tournament begins. So yeah, like I said, we're going out of order. As you can see from this video, we started with Group B. Let me know what you want next. Anyways, take care. Lá com noite.